changes that the Victoria nomination has introduced, the state has introduced. I will also discuss most of the target sectors that the nomination, the Victoria market is targeting, the Victoria state is targeting. And I will be presenting a slide, a PowerPoint slide, and I'll also be taking up some questions related to the questions. Now, I'm more than happy to address any questions related to any visa inquiry. More than happy to address the state nominations. Now, this presentation is basically designed for Victoria State. However, if there are any questions relating to any other state, I'm more than happy to take those as well. All right, I'll just share my screen now. In between the slides, if I have any questions coming up, I'm more than happy to take those as well. All right. So these are my contact details. As I mentioned, my name is Gunjan. I work as a registered migration agent with Aussizz Group in the Collins Street head office. You can directly contact me on these details. I will also leave my contact details in the last presentation as well. Okay, so why I've got this slide is that I have a lot of questions when I do the consultations. One of the common questions that I get from the clients is that what are the different types of state nominations? So these are the categories 190 and 491. The 190 is a state nomination subclass. It is not an independent subclass like 189. So for 190, you have to be nominated by the state. The state gives you 5 points and 190 is a permanent residency. The 491 is a provisional visa for 5 years. So it is not a permanent residency, it is a provisional visa. So you have the opportunity to live in the regional area for 3 years and work there for 3 years. Your salary has to be 54,000 minimum per year. So after 3 years, then you're eligible to apply for permanent residency. So 491 is not a permanent residency. It's a state regional provisional visa. By the name itself, it says provisional visa, which is for 5 years. Once you have been granted a 491, you cannot apply for 190. That's one of the criteria. But you can apply for both 190 and 491. So one of the most common questions I have, why I keep repeating, is because when I do consultations, I have a lot of common questions that all the clients are asking. So I've summarized some of the questions to make it easier for everybody to understand. Now, another common question that I get from clients is that, can I apply for both together? Yes, you can. For any state, whether it's Victoria, Western Australia, South Australia, you can apply for both the nomination types. And as per the eligibility of that state, you will be invited for your particular category of visa. Now, going to the next slide. As I've already explained, this explains 190 and 491. 190 permanent residency, you can work and study anywhere in Australia. You could be sponsored by the eligible resident of permanent residence. Or 491, you can stay in Australia for 5 years, live, work, and study in a designated area, and you're eligible for permanent residency after 3 years from the time your visa is granted. Now, because this presentation is designed specifically for Victoria, I'm going to explain the step-by-step process of how, from the start till the end, that what all is involved in the whole Victoria nomination process, from the EUI to the visa. The first step is to make an expression of interest. Without making an expression of interest, you cannot proceed further. And to be eligible to apply for expression of interest, you must have minimum 65 points. So you can only proceed with making an expression of interest, one, if you have a skill assessment, if you meet minimum 65 points, which I'll get onto it later, what are the requirements. However, the first step is to make expression of interest. Once your expression of interest is lodged, you go to the next step, which is applying for the submitting a registration of interest, which is called an ROI. This is again why I've got these two steps here, is that because initially, when this Victoria was not having these target sectors pathway, a couple of years ago, they only had 3 steps to the 190 process. One was the expression of interest, then nomination, and then straight visa. But what they have done this time is they have introduced a new extra step after EOI, which is called the ROI. The registration of interest is like a cover letter to the Victorian state, that why should you be selected for the nomination? What are your skills? What is your contribution to the state? So why I say it's like a cover letter is like when you submit your resume or a cover letter, you are making an impression to the state that, okay, why you shouldn't select me for this particular category. So the registration of interest is similar to that. In the registration of interest, you express your interest and question. There are a lot of questions that you need to answer those questions to the state as well. Once the expression of interest is lodged, you submit a registration of interest. You don't need to attach any documents in the ROI. It's basic information that you're providing to the department, to the state, nominating state. Once your ROI is lodged, you need to wait for the state to get back to you. So you can't really do anything, and they don't have any windows as well. Once the ROI is lodged, you need to make sure, first of all, this is a very critical step, the ROI, because your invitation, your chances of invitation for the nomination is based on this registration of interest. You need to make sure that the information that is going in the registration of interest corresponds to the information in the expression of interest. Your expression of interest has to have the same number in the ROI. Your skill assessment nominated occupation should be similar. So in the expression of interest, for example, if somebody has lodged an expression of interest using the nominated occupation as developer programmer, and in the ROI, sorry about that. In the ROI, if you're selecting a different nominated occupation, you will not be selected, and it'll end up in either refusal or you will not be invited at all, and you'll be still waiting. So you need to make sure that the information is corresponding at all. Now, once the ROI is lodged, you need to wait for the invitation and receive an invitation to apply. Victoria State has been pretty good in inviting candidates for ICT security specialist on 90 to 95 points, whether you're working in any target sectors. Once you have received the invitation to apply, you need to prepare all your supporting documentations, which I will come on to the next slide. My next slide will be based on what kind of documents you will need to provide for the nomination. Now, once you have lodged a nomination via the Melbourne Live In portal, that is done through the portal, not through the Department of Home Affairs, because this is the Victoria nomination. So it has to be done through the nomination, the Victoria portal. Once it's lodged, and if you received a request, then you need to respond to any information within the 14 days. You usually don't get an extension, so you need to make sure that the deadlines and timelines are met from the Victorian state. All right, now going to the next slide. Okay. Now, this is just an overview that what are the basic requirements. First, you have to get your ROI selected. Without getting an ROI selected, you cannot apply for the nomination or visa. You must be living and working in Victoria. I get a lot of questions saying that I'm living in New South Wales. Can I apply for Victoria nominating state? No, you must be living and working in Victoria, else you are not eligible to apply for ROI or nomination. You have to be under 45 years of age, which is the basic requirement for the skilled migration program. Have at least competent English, have a valid skill assessment. Without a valid skill assessment, you cannot apply for registration of interest or expression of interest. You must have minimum 65 points. That is the minimum points. However, very unlikely you're going to be invited on 65 points, to be very honest. I haven't had any invitations on 65 points. So if you are lodging an expression of interest, I highly recommend to work on the English. Try as much as you can to get superior or proficient English. Try to maximize your points in any way, whether it's NATI exam or professional year program. I highly recommend those extra 5 points makes a lot of difference. Now, the next slide is The documentation is required. Now, this is one of the most important part of the nomination. Like I said, the first step is the expression of interest, and the second step is the our registration of interest. Once the registration of interest is received, you get to apply for the nomination. Now, when you apply for the nomination, what documents do you need? You need to keep these ready. Most of the clients, what they do is they wait for the nomination to receive the nomination. Then they end up in saying that, oh, I don't have my employment contract, or my employer didn't pay me superannuation. I don't have my pay slips. I don't have a position description. Because you have only 14 days to apply for the nomination, I highly recommend that you keep these documents ready once you have lodged your registration of interest as well. Whether you receive the nomination or not, or later stage, it is better to have the documents ready. Another thing why I'm saying is that most of the clients' visas are expiring in September, October, even next year in March. So if your visa is expiring, you will take time to collect all the documents. So it's always good to keep the documents ready. So once you receive your nomination, you can immediately apply for the nomination. You need your resume, a detailed resume. Your resume should be up to date. Your resume should reflect your latest employment. If you're submitting, okay, I've been working as a registered nurse through an agency or directly with the hospital, your resume should reflect the direct, all your work experiences up to date. It should correspond with all the supporting documents as well. Pay slips, especially your most recent pay slip. Now, this is at the time of nomination, not at the time of registration of interest. Superannuation, why I've highlighted these in oranges, these are mandatory documents. In any case, I do have clients saying that my company didn't pay super. So if you have lodged your registration of interest, it will be a good idea to let your employers know to start paying you super timely in your account, because that will be required at the time of nomination when you receive the nomination invitation. A position description. Now, what is a position description? The position description is basically your task and duties. Every company, when they offer you a job, for example, as a developer programmer, they have to mention your position and what will be your task, duties, and responsibilities in detail. That position description reflects what will be your task on a day-to-day basis. Registration, if you're applying as a nurse, you must have an APRA registration. That is mandatory. The Victorian declaration form, that is a mandatory form. That's like a declaration form to the Victoria state. An appointment or agent form, if you're hiring a migration agent, So if I'm lodging as a migration agent, if I'm lodging an application on my client's behalf, I must supply an appointment of agent form to the department, to the nominating state, to the Victoria state, that yes, I am representing this client, and obviously we have obligations towards our client, and as per working towards as per the code of conduct of migration regulation authorities. All right, now let me go to the next slide. Okay. Now these, I've mentioned some of the points of living and working in Victoria. Most currently, I've been experiencing, most of the common questions is that I'm not working full-time, I've got casual hours. Some of the questions are like, I've got my skill assessment as a developer programmer, but I'm working in aged care. So can I apply? So I've listed these points targeting those questions. First thing first is you must be currently working in Victoria in the target sector. Now, those target sectors I will address in some of my next slides, that what are the target sectors you must be working in. If you're not working in any of the target sectors, you are not eligible to apply. There are some gray areas in between, which I'll get onto it later. They are accepting casual employment, so it is not mandatory for you to work full-time or part-time. You could be working casual employment. Some of the employers, some of the nurses, or even the IT people, or the sciences or technology people, they are all working casual. Even if you're working 15 hours a week, 20 hours a week, that is acceptable. You must have an employment contract. most recent payslip, extract from your superannuation account showing the most recent payment from your employer. If you're applying for a nomination now and your superannuation was paid last year and it was not paid this year, it must be paid this year. So you can get back to your employer and say, look, it's superannuation is mandatory. They have to pay the super because it is required for the nominating state as well. In some cases, they can also require for additional payslips or reference letter from your employer. So what I do when I'm lodging a nomination application, it is always better to lodge a decision-ready application so it doesn't give a chance to the nominating state to ask for further documents because it delays your applications as well. So when you're lodging your nomination, you must submit your latest recent payslip. I can take some of the questions in between. I'm more than happy to address more questions later. Ali Mohammed is asking, I'm currently working in regional Victoria in painting company. I want to apply for 491. So Ali, painting, unfortunately, is not in one of the target sectors. So you're not eligible to apply for the Victoria state. However, I'm more than happy to look for options for you for other states, regional areas. If you have got your visa left for a couple of months, we can have a discussion about which states you would be eligible for. Or if you are eligible for an employer sponsorship, we can also look at the options for employer sponsorships as well. Hans is asking, when do you think they will start sending invites for chef? I know it's a pretty tricky question. They have opened up the workforce skills pathway, which is my next slides is about the workforce skills pathway. I'm happy to discuss those as well later. All right. What are my options for a steel detailer project coordinator in advanced manufacturing company based in Docklands? So Ayushi, that's a good occupation working in advanced manufacturing because advanced manufacturing, one of the target sectors. So you can discuss with me and we can look at the options for you. Now I'll get on to the next slide because it talks about the target sectors and it'll answer most of the questions that the clients have. Okay, now this is the target sectors. Health, medical research, life sciences, agriculture, food, advanced manufacturing, new energy, emission reduction, and circular economy. I will explain some of these target sectors in my next slide because I know these are basic sectors. Most of the people get confused. Basically, what do these sectors are involved in? What do this involve? What do they collaborate with? And they are targeting the business present. If your company is located in Parkville, Footscray, or Docklands, you will be regarded, you will be prioritized. But it doesn't mean that they're only inviting candidates who are working in Parkville, Footscray, or Docklands. Not necessary. And there are targeting other areas as well. It all depends on your target sector as well. For example, if someone is working as an ICT security specialist in the digital sector or as a programming or a gaming sector, in the digital side, the department, the nominating Victorian state is only inviting candidates who have got a skill assessment in ICT security specialist. They have clearly mentioned only cybersecurity skills or digital gaming engineers with coding are highly regarded for 190. Other digital skills will be nominated for 491, but for 491, you have to be living and working in a regional area. So if you are working in a digital sector not in a regional area, you will not be invited for 190 at all. So they're not inviting candidates, absolutely. So keep your options open. You can apply for Victoria 190. However, you at the same time, please keep your options open as well at the same time because they are only inviting candidates for cybersecurity skills. Now, I can get on to the next slide because that will explain the target sectors. Okay. Now, this slide is only focused on health at the moment, on the health occupation. However, when I talk about the health occupation, example, nurses, to be considered in health sector, you do not need to be only working as a nurse. You can also apply for the Victoria 190 state if you're working as a software developer or a business analyst or an engineer. So if you're working as a software engineer in one of the hospitals or nursing agencies, you can still apply for health sector. However, keep in mind, they will always prioritize the candidates who are working as a nurse in the sector and not as an engineer. If you're working as a ICT security specialist in a hospital, you can apply for the health sector. However, they will only prioritize candidates if you're working in a digital sector. These are the occupations currently they are considering for the health sector: midwife in aged care, critical care, mental health, preoperative, and pediatrics. Most of the clients, they have the skill assessment as not elsewhere classified, and they can do their practice for a limited number of days, and they can get their registration in mental health as well. So if you're a nurse and you have studied in a particular sector, you should also explore other skill assessment areas. So you open up the opportunity. So you can have 2 skill assessments from HAPRA registration. If you have got one assessment, that doesn't mean that you can't have the second one. So I would encourage that if you fall under any of these sectors, please do apply for the skill assessment. So it makes you eligible to apply for the Victoria 190. And because Victoria 190 is currently targeting these subdivisions of nursing. Secondly, please keep in mind that if you are directly employed by the health provider, the 190 invitations chances is higher than somebody who is working over an agency. Apart from all these things, also keep in mind the point system. The higher the points, the higher the chances are to be invited. However, like I said, the people who are working directly with the hospital, they are prioritized over the people who are working under the agency. Again, you could be working casual, not necessary. It could be working part-time or full-time. You could be working casual with the hospital as well. Okay. Now, I had someone here asking me to define the target sector. For example, in agriculture food sector, what sort of industry will it look at? So thank you, Tejveer. That is one of the most common questions that I get. When you talk about agriculture food sector, I have listed it here. I'll get on to it after I explain the medical research. I have picked these 4 sectors because these are the 4 sectors mainly the clients get confused. With nursing, people know that the health is hospital and nursing. However, these are the sectors where most of the clients get confused that what do they deal with. So let's get to the first medical research one. Now, the word itself, research, itself means that you should be involved in some kind of innovation or research, or you should be using your skills in one of the medical research companies. So any activity such as drug development, clinical trials. So for example, somebody who has studied bioinformatics or or biotechnologist or is a biochemist, and there are a lot of jobs related to clinical research. So if you are involved in any sort of clinical research or a clinical trial, even if you are assisting someone, you don't have to be working as a clinical research officer or a senior clinical research officer. If you are involved in any kind of research that is involved with health or digital health or any clinical trial or any health product manufacturing companies, I encourage to apply for the Victoria 190. Or if you're living in a regional area, apply for 491. The target sectors for 190 and the target sectors for 491 is the same. There's no difference between the target sectors. It's just the criteria is for 491, you should be living and working in a regional area. Now, I hope the medical research is clear, because any kind of research to do with health, Victoria encourages to apply. Now, let's get into the life sciences sector. Now, life sciences terminology can be quite confusing because it's a very, very broad category. Life sciences sector, it's a very huge sector. Now, when you go to the life sciences, let's go like as per the term medical technology, biotechnology, and pharmaceutical industries. If you're working in a chemist, If you're working with any company, literally, who deals with pharmaceutical products, that is life sciences. Any company that is involved with food processing, or you can also be considered as a part of the life sciences sector. Any products to do with nutracare or natural products, anything to do with processed technology. Biotechnology is one of the booming sectors as well. So they encourage people to do anything with biotechnology in any company that has got to do with biotechnology or medical technology. Anywhere where there is science involved, basically, you are encouraged to apply. When they talk about life sciences, any companies to do with science, biology, chemist, physics. So these are all the science categories. Now, when you come to the agriculture food, I had a question here to do with agriculture food. Now, this is kind of too similar. When you talk about agriculture, the first thing that comes in your mind is food, because that's what an agriculture do. So it's like growth. Now, what Victoria is targeting is that if your skills are contributing to the development of food or production, so if you are working in a company that deals with the production or agriculture of food, that is basically agriculture food. When they talk about modernization of Victoria's agriculture food sector, what could modernization mean is that, as an example, I have a client who is working as an analyst programmer or in a digital sector. He's working as a business analyst. So what is your contribution? So keep in mind all these sectors, if you're using your STEM skills, so you can basically mix. So if you're using any of your STEM skills, STEM is like science, technology, and mathematics. If you're using any of your STEM skills in any of these sectors, this got to do with research, science, agriculture, manufacturing, you can apply for Victoria 190. Keep in mind that you do need a skill assessment as well in your nominated occupation. Now let's get on to the last advanced manufacturing sector. Now, what is manufacturing industry that deal with defense or aerospace? So to be considered to be working in advanced manufacturing, again, you should be using your STEM skills to enhance innovation, research, and development. This is a very broad category because there are a lot of companies who deal with supply chain management. They've also included supply chain management. So if you're working as, I'll take another example or the same example as a business analyst or a software engineer in a supply chain management company, you can apply under the advanced manufacturing sector. Now, sorry. Now, why I'm talking about these sectors is that all these sectors, the basic background about all these sectors is research and innovation. If you see at the broad category, all the sectors, they target towards research, growth, development, science. So the conclusion is basically that you should be using your skills in these sectors where your involvement is about the growth of economy in terms of science, medical research, agriculture, food. So what basically the reason behind this is that the Australia obviously wants the economy to boom again post-COVID. So all these involved in economic growth. So that's the reason why they have prioritized these sectors. Now, let's get on to the next. Now, these are the most common questions I get. I've summarized these questions where I get a lot of questions from the common questions. Now, one of the questions mainly I'm asked is that I've got a skill assessment, but I'm not working in that sector. So like I said, your ROI, nomination, visa, you should have the same nominated occupation in all across your applications. You cannot have different occupations in different categories. English test and skill assessment must have at least 12 months validity remaining. When you are submitting your registration of interest, you make sure that your English test result and skill assessment have at least 12 months remaining, because when you will receive the nomination invitation and your skill assessment and English test is expiring, you may not be able to apply for the nomination. And obviously that will be like a very big disappointment if you receive the nomination and you're not eligible to apply because your test is expiring, and there is a long wait for the English test as well. So if you think your English test is expiring in the next couple of months, I highly encourage to apply and sit for another English test, because you won't be able to apply for nomination if it is expiring. 491, I've been asked that where should I be living? You must be living and working in a regional area. Victoria is only selecting candidates to apply for nomination if you're using your STEM skills. So like I had a couple of questions here. I'm working as a graphic designer, or I'm working as a painter, or a project coordinator. So these are not STEM skills. STEM is science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So anything not in the target sector, anything not to do with the skills, you will not be eligible to apply for Victoria 190. You might as well look for other state nomination criteria. You might fit into any other state. You can have only one active ROI submit at one time. If you want to lodge another one, you must withdraw the previous one and then submit a new ROI. If your points have changed, if your job has changed, you can't just keep waiting for the invitation. You have to withdraw the previous one, and you have to relodge a new ROI and a new nomination to be invited for the nomination. Now, another question I get asked is that when am I getting invited? So there is no submission window for 21-22 program. You can submit your ROI anytime between the 7th July 2021, and you will be selected throughout the year. So this is open till April 2022, and you will be selected anytime during that period. There is no nomination window, unfortunately. Okay, now apart from these target sectors, now this slide has nothing to do with target sectors because they introduce a workforce skill pathway. It's open to hospitality sector and the pre-primary school teacher sector. Now, if you talk about the hospitality sector, the process is basically the same: EOI and then the registration of interest. After the registration of interest, you need to wait to be invited to apply for nomination. Once your nomination is approved, then you apply for the visa. For this hospitality sector, this is through the workforce skill pathway. You do not need to be working in the target sector. So you don't need to be working as a chef in a hospital or in a manufacturing industry. So if you're working as a chef, you have a skill assessment as a chef or a cook, you can apply for 190 or 491. You should be living and working in Victoria as a cook or a chef. Casual, part-time, full-time, doesn't matter. If you have a skill assessment as a chef and you are working as a chef, I highly recommend you to apply for the registration of interest for the Victoria 190 and 491 if you're living in the regional area. Early childhood educators, you must be eligible under 190, 491. You should be living and working in Victoria as an early childhood educator, and you must have a skill assessment as a pre-primary school teacher. The skill assessment authority is AITSL. So 190 Victoria is also nominating teachers as well. So I highly encourage, if you have a skill assessment, if you're about to finish your studies, you should apply for the Victoria 190. All right, now, this is some of the data from last year. Now, this only gives a bit of indication that how much invitations they had for the top 5 countries as well. So last year, the Victoria nominations were from India, 24%, Philippines, UK, Nepal, China. So this is some of the data from the Victorian nominating state, from the Victoria state. The blue one is for the Australian qualifications and the purple one is for international qualifications only. So this is like a graph. The majority of the invitations came from the Australian qualifications only. Now, this circle is basically an indication. Now, this is from the last year program. It doesn't mean that it's going to remain the same for this year as well. This is just a bit of an indication. The biggest sector was the health sector, where they invited candidates for the Victoria 190 and 491. The rest was digital. By the looks of it, by the invitations that we have received, it still seems quite similar. In terms of the invitations, the IT sector and health sector is obviously the majority of the sector. We had obviously invitations for manufacturing industry, agriculture, food. The energy sector also covered a bit of the sector. So that's not too bad as well. Medical research, less percentage, life sciences, less percentage. So doesn't matter how much percentage, it's always I encourage the students to apply if you're eligible, because by the looks of it, what has been happening, there has been so much uncertainty when they change, what they change, there's not much indication. So obviously I encourage people to apply even for the workforce skill pathway, like I was talking about. Even if you're not working in the target sector, you are still encouraged to apply if you have skill assessment as a cook or a chef. I mean, they just recently introduced it, so they might be inviting candidates soon. They don't have a fixed window, like I mentioned. There is no submission window for the 21-22 program, but they can select any time throughout the year. Today, we had some invitations as well. Mostly, I had invitations for the ICT security specialist. So they don't have a timeline. They can invite anytime during that period. Now, I'll take some questions which before I finish the presentation. And if you have any questions related to employer-sponsored as well, feel free to ask me. If you have been working in a company for more than 2 years, apart from 190, you may be eligible to apply for the 482, or if you have 3 years experience, you might be eligible to apply for 186 direct entry as well. My last live session was based on employer nomination, the 186 direct entry and the 186 transition stream, and the 482 temporary skill shortage visa. So if you are working in a company, if your employer is willing to sponsor you and your occupation falls into the medium term or short term accordingly, you can apply for employer sponsored visa as well. Same goes for chef and cook. If you're working in a company as a chef more than 2 years, you're eligible to apply for 482 as well. So apart from 190, if your visa is expiring, I do recommend to keep your options open. Right, I'll take some questions, and if you wish to contact me, you can always contact me on my direct details on my mobile or email as well. Right. Ali, I've already answered your question. Currently working in regional area in painting company. So painting is not one of the target sectors, and not one of the STEM skills. So as a painter, if you have a skill assessment as a painter, I can think of maybe New South Wales regional areas, or I can look for probably if any other state it would be sponsoring. Depends on Ali, how much work experience do you have? If you have got more than 12 months work experience, if your visa is expiring, you can talk to your employer about a trainee visa. So we can explore other visa opportunities for you. You can get in touch with me to book a consultation. I'm more than happy to discuss other visa options. When do you think they will start sending invites for chef? 90 points. Hans, thanks for your question. There is no invitation window. However, like I mentioned, I do recommend if you're eligible, please submit your expression of interest and the registration of interest for chef. What if I'm an accountant working in a target sector, new energy emission reduction, circular economy? Mara, initially, they had made it clear that the STEM mathematics is not, accountancy cannot be counted in STEM skills. However, in the last session, they did have an indication that you're always encouraged to apply. If you're using any of the innovation or any of maths. If, for example, I've got a client who did his bachelor's in mathematics and he did his master's in accountancy. So she does have a background of mathematics. So if you can get in touch with me, Mara, I can book in a consultation for next week and we can discuss the options for you. Can social workers apply for 190 and 491? Maithili, yes, I would encourage you to apply. If you're working as a social worker in a health sector, I would encourage you to apply for Victoria 190 and 491. All these sectors, they have a lot of gray areas. It all depends that how you present your case to the Victoria nomination state. And if you think you are anywhere related or linked, if your company is related to the target sector, I encourage you to apply. What are my options as a steel detailer, project coordinator in advanced manufacturing in a company based in Docklands is one of the main presents. So you will be prioritized. However, a project coordinator is not a STEM skill. So unfortunately, it doesn't fall into the targets, the STEM skills. So it doesn't matter if you're working in a target sector, if you're not using those technology, science, mathematics, engineering, IT skills, you will not be eligible. Project coordinator, I have some clients in New South Wales, 491. So if you want to get in touch with me, I can look for 491 New South Wales opportunities for you as a project coordinator. If you got your skill assessment as well, so you can get in touch with me. We can discuss this further. Sai is asking, I've been working in the public healthcare sector. Are there any chances to get 190? I have 75 points. That is a little bit of low points to be invited. 75 points, they have mostly the nurses have been invited on lower points. However, in other areas, I would recommend to try increasing your score or look for other state nomination or look for other visas options as well. So don't get stuck always on the state nomination. You must explore other visas as well. Other visas like the employer sponsored or trainee visa 482 186. So I do encourage to explore other areas of visas as well. Agriculture, food, like I said, Tejwar, I've already mentioned. What does it involve? If you have any particular company in mind, and if you want to discuss whether that company falls under the target sector or not, agriculture, food manufacturing, you can contact me and we can discuss that further. Chances of 190 of 75 points as a chef. So it is a bit of a lower score, but minimum points is 65 points. So they haven't still indicated that how many points. So we haven't had the round first for chef or cooks for Victoria yet. So you can put in your nomination and you just need to wait. However, like I said, if your visa is expiring and you might look for other opportunities, you can apply for a 408 COVID visa in the hospitality sector that's targeted. You may get a 12 months visa grant on a COVID visa. So you can try for COVID visa as well if you want to explore, if you want to obviously have more time here as well. Previously, Victoria granted 190 to graduates who did PhD from any Victoria University. You are still encouraged to apply if you are a PhD graduate. Yes, they did have this indication actually that if you're a PhD graduate, you are encouraged to apply. So they might be coming back with that, but they haven't said yes. But in the last seminar that the Victoria nominating state did, the department, they were discussing about the PhD graduates, but they haven't mentioned any news yet. Heshan is asking, security specialist in retail is under digital sector. Yes, ICT security specialist is under digital sector. So you can apply if you're working as an ICT security specialist and you've got a skill assessment as an ICT security specialist. Is casual employment considered to get the points for 190? Yes, if you're working on a casual basis, if you're not working full-time, you can apply for a Victoria state nomination. But if you're talking about the points, to claim employment points, there is a certain criteria that you should be working minimum number of hours. So you can discuss it with me. If you have the opportunity to claim points, don't lose it, because the extra 5 points for 1 year work experience, they do count a lot. All right. Does it depends on the company background or turnover? So turnover is nothing to do with the nomination, Victoria nomination. It all depends on the target sector and what is the company dealing with and what is your involvement, what is your skills contribution into that sector. The turnover is a part of the 482 and 186 when it comes to employer sponsored visas. That's where it's counts. Is it good to study cookery or enroll nursing in South Australia? Nirod, I need to look at your background and are you lodging the student visa? Because if you're lodging the student visa based on a course, you do need to address a lot of things before you choose the course. It will be good to discuss what is your background. Do you think early childhood teachers will be still in trend 2022? Asta, that's a good question, because I've been in the industry for a couple of years now, and I have seen teachers never been gone off the list. But yes, we can't guarantee that what's going to happen in 2022, because still things keep changing in 2021. So it's hard to say that next year it'll still be in the trend. I mean, obviously, you mean to say, will it still have chances of nominations? But if you're studying early childhood teacher, is it like a pre-primary or secondary? Let me know, because South Australia, 190. South Australia is good in nominating candidates for teachers. If you're working there for 12 months in the Greater Adelaide, or if you're working for 6 months in the outer regional areas, so South Australia might have chances for the state nominations. And Victoria has also introduced the early childhood pre-primary school teacher. So if you want to go through that path, that's not a bad option as well. If I work as a part-time educator while studying, does my kid? So you can only apply for the Victoria nomination if you're working in your target sector. So if you have got a job, yes, I would encourage you to work as an early childhood educator, because Victoria nomination criteria is that you must be working. So just having a skill assessment, you will not be eligible to apply for the Victoria nomination state. Thank you. You're welcome. What and okay, you mean ANSCO code comes under digital sector? No, under digital sector, you can fall under different categories in the same unit group. So if you're asking about ANSCO code, so for example, there are a couple of occupations that fall under the same unit group. So ICT security specialist, I'm able to explain you if you want to have a chat with me. I can explain you how it works, because it can be quite confusing about the word digital can be quite confusing. I'm working as a security specialist in retail. Is it under digital sector? So you are using your STEM skills, but a retail is not a target sector. So that keep in mind. So the target sectors are health, medical research, life sciences. So like retail depends what kind of retail. Does your company deal with providing uniforms to the hospitals? So I can probably try to relate something like that. You know what I mean? Retail depends what kind of retail is it. But if you're just pure, it's like a shop, like a clothing store, then no, because it's not in one of the target sectors. So that doesn't count. Because my visa is expiring, is it better to do student visa or 408? Okay, thanks for that. Look, Hans, it's hard to advise like this without discussing your case with you, because it doesn't matter what is better. It depends what you're eligible for. It depends what you want to do in future. You lodge a student visa if you want to study, not to extend time in Australia. Student visa is obviously applied if you want to genuinely want to study a course. 408 depends if you're eligible for, if you're working in one of the target sectors to apply for 408. If you are eligible for a 12 months visa, then yes, you may apply for 408. Depends how much visa is left. you can discuss with me and I can advise you accordingly. Okay, if you don't have a job in engineering field, you have a skill assessment in mechanical engineer. What are the options for Victoria? So you have a skill assessment, but you must be working in Victoria to apply for the Victoria state nomination. So you can't apply if you don't have a job, if you're not working in, if you're not using your skills. It's all about using your skills in those target sectors, right? Jasveer is asking, I'm working in target sector as assistant engineer. What are the possibilities to get? So you're working in target sectors as a technician. So you're using engineering skills. So you're using one of the STEM skills. 65 points might be too less to get invited. So I encourage to look for other state nominations as well and other visa options. Does computer network and system engineer come under digital sector? So the digital sector is a sector, it's not an occupation. So what digital sector means is that your company should be dealing with the digital sector. So you could have a skill assessment as a computer network system engineer. That doesn't mean that you are in a digital. So you should be working in a digital sector. I hope it makes sense. So your nominated occupation doesn't come under digital sector. You should be working in a digital sector using your nominated occupation. Saloni is asking, I'm working as a chef from March 2021 and finishing my certificate in December. Yes, if you're working as a chef, but you need a skill assessment as well, you're finishing your cert 4, then you might need to do a job ready program. So without a job ready program or a different visa pathway, you won't be able to apply for a skill assessment. So you need a skill assessment as a chef or a cook if you want to apply for the Victoria 190 state or 491. I'm currently working as a computer network and system engineer in mental health company. When should I apply under health? Yes, you must apply under health. And the only thing is that we need to put that under the right category. And there are a couple of questions that the Victoria nomination state asks, that what is your contribution to the sector? So you need to clearly identify that which STEM skills you're using, how you are using your STEM skills, what is your contribution to the innovation sector and into those target sectors. So you need to address that properly. So Adnan, you can get in touch with me, and I would highly recommend that you must apply on 90 points and plus 5 state. You will be applying on 95 points, which is a good score to apply on the health sector. I'm working in a digital sector. It's an IT solutions company, but does it need to be a target sector? So you're yourself saying, Pratik, that you're working in a digital sector. So that is a target sector. But it depends what assessment you have. Currently in the digital sector, they're only nominating candidates in the ICT security specialist or gaming sector. So if you're working in a digital sector, that is a target sector. I've got a couple of other questions here as however, I might not be able to answer all the questions. And if you want to discuss your individual situation, you can contact me on my mobile number, or please leave a text with your contact number and email address so I can get in touch with you and discuss your individual situation. And you can also discuss any visa opportunities, not just the Victoria 190, any visa subclass, or if you are struggling to choose a course that what you should study, you can get in touch with me and we can pre-plan your pathway ahead. So that helps as well. And yes, thank you everyone for your questions, and you can get in touch with me, and thank you for your time.